Hello and welcome to My Confidence Matters webinar, Powerful Performance Pays and How to Inspire Confidence in Your High Potential Women. Welcome, I'm Joy Burnford and I'm the founder and director of My Confidence Matters. I set My Confidence Matters up in order to inspire and motivate women at work. I've had over 20 years experience working in the management consulting industry in various different guises. I worked for a large management consulting firm, I've worked for a trade association, and I've also set up a global business, co-founded a global business about 10 years ago. So I've been there, done that, and I've got the t-shirt of being having a lack of confidence when it comes to speaking up at work. And I really feel passionate about helping other women who are in this situation to get over this fear. It's a horrible feeling, and I even feel nervous still myself sometimes, but I feel much more confident than I used to, and I now know the impact of having really good training and expert coaches alongside you to help you to deliver these fantastic presentations or pitching for business. I'm joined today by Jane Renton, who is ex-BBC presenter and author of an economist book called Coaching and Mentoring, amongst other things. And Jane actually trained me about 15 years ago. So I'm delighted to be joined by Jane today. She's coached hundreds of people around the world on media training and communication skills, and she is one of our lead coaches on our programs. And I'm delighted that Jane is with us today. Hello, Jane.
Hello, Joy, and thank you for inviting me. I think it's really interesting because I remember you, Joy, as just a young thing, and you're still quite a young thing, but I do remember you. I thought you were confident, but now you tell me after all those years you weren't. And I think this is quite interesting because I have trained, as you say, a lot of women all over the world from every different region, and I think there's an enormous similarity. I've met some extraordinarily successful women, but they all tell me, help, I can't do this. And I think it's very, very normal. And there's a big difference between men and women in this regard. And what I will stick my neck out and say is that women, I think maybe it's to do with the way we bring up girls. I don't know. I hope I haven't done it to my daughter, but I probably have. But I think we need to teach them to be able to speak up more. But the tendency is to speak up less and to apologise. I think women use less direct language than men. Yeah. They downplay their abilities, which I don't think most men do. And they don't use the powerful body language that a lot of men use.
Absolutely.
But what I want to say, and I think you probably concur because you've done the training and you've encouraged other people to get trained, is that actually these are skills that you can acquire if you've got a will to do so.
Absolutely.
They are teachable and you can learn them.
Yeah, and I think the other point of today's webinar is to help you as line managers of teams of women to actually give you some confidence to actually have the conversation with the women in your team and know what to say and know how to coach them into feeling more confident, because you probably think they're confident, but deep down they're probably not very confident at all. So the objective of today is to run through some tips for you so that you can go away and have those conversations with your team. So, Jane, as you know, one of the first things we did at My Confidence Matters was to commission some research of over 300 businesswomen. And it wasn't a terrible surprise, but 73% of women do lack confidence at least once a month, which is quite scary because I think a lot of people who work with women probably don't realise that they lack confidence. That's 7 in 10 women. So if you have 10 people in your team, that's potentially 7 of those actually not feeling very confident. This female confidence challenge was described as the imposter syndrome, as you may have heard, by 2 psychologists in 1978. And this is when women frequently express they don't feel they deserve their job and they're sort of waiting to be found out by somebody. I know I felt that I've suffered from imposter syndrome a lot, and it's not a very nice feeling. And I think men are not exempt from doubting themselves too, and I think a lot of men do feel unconfident, but generally it is more of a female trait, and it's really...
I think it's quite worrying, really. And you're right, men do suffer from it, but I think women suffer from it disproportionately to a greater degree.
Yeah. And what do you think are the consequences of women lacking confidence?
Well, I think there are obvious ones. They don't progress up the career ladder, and that's a great shame. It's a great shame of the investment that a good line manager makes in their high potential woman. It's a great shame because perhaps they're not as effective as they might be about pitching to clients, having the confidence to do that, to actually make those important sales, to actually market to the right people. And of course, there's the biggest, perhaps the most serious consequence is the toll that it will take on their health, because stress, work-related stress, should never be underestimated, and it is the biggest source of ultimately mental health illness, and it's a worry.
And I suppose ultimately,
so really not good.
Yeah, and ultimately for you, the women could leave the organisation as well, which will cost you a lot of money to replace those.
I think that's right, and I think you've done some research into this about how much it costs to replace any senior executive, and I think women suddenly don't make that. I think some other surveys in different industries are showing that there's a slowdown in women progressing to the higher echelons now.
Absolutely.
And I think, we've had the Helena Morrissey campaign in the UK, but there is the big worry that it will all start to go backwards. And I mean, that is very worrying. And I think that we really have to attack this issue quite strongly.
Definitely. So today is really a taster for getting more effective communicators in your team. And we will give you 5 simple steps so that you can empower the women in your team to sell more effectively, to be able to communicate with credibility, and ultimately so that you can improve your bottom line.
Really, actually, it's about the 3 C's, isn't it? It's about good communications. Is very simply, it's about being credible, it's about being confident, and it's about being as charismatic as we can possibly be. So it's about how you engender those 3 C's. And I'd just like to say something. It is about selling more effectively, but I would sort of banish the word selling, because actually what effective communications is all about is actually it's more about educating and informing. Anyone who does the hard sell on you is a big turn-off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think good communication transcends that.
Yes.
And that is what you need to really position your staff towards achieving.
Yes, absolutely. And as we say, we're going to give you these simple steps. And so your first challenge, we'd like you to commit to having at least one conversation with a member of your team this week about how confident they feel about their ability to communicate effectively with colleagues and clients, and find out how you can support them. And if you can do that, then we know we've done a good job. So today, we'd like to give you some tools that you can use when you're having your conversations with the women in your team. So we've called these the 5 P's of speaking up. And Jane is going to run through these for us.
Yes, annoyingly, we've had the 3 C's. Now we're going to talk about the 5 P's. And actually, one of the things, if you ever make a presentation, you have to pitch at a meeting, everybody says to you, oh, you must prepare. But how do you prepare if nobody's ever sat you down and explained all the things you have to think about and you have to do?
Absolutely.
It really isn't rocket science. We've made it as easy as we can. And by the way, you will find people who make it into a science. It isn't rocket science. And in fact, a lot of this stuff was invented by the ancient Greeks, and it's still totally valid. Trust me on this. And basically, I want to tell you a little bit more about how those 5 P's can actually get you through the most tricky performances. Well, Joy, I want to talk about push. Sorry, my flattened Scottish vowels, I can't say
push
the way that the English say it, so I have to say push. So we'll talk about push. And sorry, it's ridiculous. But it's basically what I'm referring to here, and I'm not going to say it again, is that it's all about, as a line manager, it's about helping your female high potentials to find the right opportunities. Now, I'm not suggesting you push them straight into the Albert Hall. I'm to use that absolutely dreadful phrase that you management consultant types like to use, it's picking the low-hanging fruit. It's finding the right opportunities for them to take a baby step, if you like, into the world of grown-up presentations. And it's little and often is the way forward. So it's finding, and you as a manager being able to identify those opportunities that are the right opportunities for your woman.
And I think this is one of the things that I found in my past. I always put somebody else forward. So an opportunity came up and I always said, oh, well, I know somebody who's better than me. I'll put them forward instead of me. And I think that was a big learning for me to actually push myself and say, I can do this. And even though it's scary actually to do it.
It is quite common. I was talking to a very, very senior woman in television, and so senior that I was quite intimidated at the thought of meeting her. And she seriously said that she had certainly gone all the way up the ladder, but she was actually turning down opportunities, even at her very elevated level, because to take the advantages that came her way in her industry. Yeah. Well, the second step, let's call it objectives and objections. It's about the planning, and it's also about your strategic purpose. Let's call it aim. And it means that you need to be very clear about looking at your audience. Who are they? What do you want them to know? And what do they think? Because really that is very much one of the very first steps you need to take. You need to really focus on the client, if it is indeed a client meeting. You need to really think about how their brain is thinking. And you need to actually think about all the objections they might raise and how you're going to deal with them. That is very much part of the planning stage. So aim is the audience, I is your intent, and M is your message. And everyone should have a message. And by a message, I don't mean apple pie and motherhood, which we're all broadly in favour of. It's about having a very specific, again, using direct language, having a strong message in the bottle.
Great.
Fail to prepare to fail, as the old adage goes. So the preparation is something you cannot rush. Now, I think this is quite common amongst companies. I think companies are often unrealistic about the time they're prepared to free up for staff to do.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're going to pitch to clients, for heaven's sake, you've got to get it right. And yet companies expect you to sort of do it the night before, and people do that. They worry about it intensely and have nightmares for the 2 weeks run up, getting worse and worse, the cold sweats in the middle of the night. And we've all been there, but it's not a good idea. So, Joy, tell me about, you've done quite a number of presentations in your time.
Yes.
I remember you doing them.
Yes.
So tell me about how you would go about.
Well, I think when I lacked confidence, I realised, having looked back, it was because I didn't prepare enough. And I think it's everybody prepares in different ways. And as long as you feel prepared, I think you then you will show a feeling of confidence. If you don't feel prepared, then you just are open to being caught out in those presentations. So for me, I think everybody prepares in different ways. For me, I usually come up with the key messages that I want to get across. I think about, as you talked about, the planning ahead, working out what the audience wants to know, and having those key messages in your mind. And then for me, I actually do a mind map, and I write down all the ideas on a mind map. I then sometimes write the speech longhand. I then would go into a shorter form and write it shorter form, and then even shorter, I'd go into bullet points, so that I can hopefully either remember the bullet points and not even have to have any notes, but also
that's quite an intensive process in itself, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think as long as you can get to the point where you've got a few bullets on a slide or on a sheet, I think that is good. And I think definitely keep the preparation of slides or visuals or props or whatever you're going to use to the very end, and do it at the very end.
I tell you how I do it, and how I actually suggest that clients that we train do it, is that actually I tell them, they've worked out their idea, they've done their research on the audience by this stage, and hopefully they have a message. They need to have one strong header, and they really have to have a very strong opening. They also need a proper structure. It's very important. Don't have too many messages. Keep it very simple. 3 is ample. And have a strong header. One of those, when you look at a newspaper and read a snappy headline, they use strong language, big verbs, direct language. You need to do the same. And, if everybody falls down into a catatonic stupor, hopefully they won't, they will know what your big message is.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be punchy. You have to wake people up right at the beginning. And you have to have lots of stories. I was talking to one of our key customers yesterday who told me this.
Remember, everybody's human at the end of the day.
It's absolutely about, it's about human interest. And it's also about being very real with your audience and connecting with them. So one of the things you have to do is to make an emotional connection with them right at the outset. You've got a few seconds to really grab them. Audience participation is very high at the beginning of a talk. It's very high at the end. So you must, begin with a bang and end with a bang. And there are various techniques you can use to do that.
Yeah. Great.
Practice makes perfect. Well, I think this is absolutely vital as well. It's one thing to have it all planned on paper. You know what you want to say, you've decided what your key messages are, you know who you're talking to, you've got a few stories, hopefully, but are you going to come across in the right way? You won't know. We're talking delivery here. And
practicing and making sure we practice.
Absolutely. It's absolutely critical. And again, just to reinforce this point, Pavarotti used to have a singing lesson every week of his illustrious career. I'm sure Andy Murray wouldn't dream of going out onto the tennis courts without his coaching sessions beforehand. I think I think the corporate world tends to think that somehow, it comes with a job.
Or you've been born with a magic gift of
yes, not so much with a silver spoon, but with the gifts of, of perfect public speaking. And that really, even if you're a good I talk far too much, but it doesn't necessarily make me a strategic communicator. And I think it's a very different skill. And sometimes people who do like to talk a lot are not good at making strategic, effective communication pitches.
How much would you? And one of the things I suggest to people they do is actually record themselves on a camera, on their telephone or their computer, and then play it back to themselves. Because I think if you can watch yourself doing it,
yes,
it's a really good way of practicing.
You really need to think about where you're going to make this speech. Is it going to be in a small room? Are you going to be sitting down? Are you going to be standing up? The one thing I really want to emphasise here, Joy, is that the voice is absolutely key in all of this. You mustn't talk too fast. You must remember to breathe. You must stand properly. Because again, going back to your picture of the woman and the 73% of women who feel unconfident at least once a month, that body language, if your body language is not right, you can have come up with the most elegant, persuasive pitch or presentation, but it won't work if your non-verbal communication is wrong. This is when you really start to need to think about practicing with your peers, but also perhaps practicing with a qualified communications coach. So by this stage, we're finally on the final and fifth step. And if you have completed all the 4 steps prior to this, you should actually be beginning to really just focus now on your performance. Ideally, at this stage, you want to be almost on automatic pilot. You've done all the legwork. You've got your stories. You know exactly who you're talking to. You've got your body language right. You've practiced until in the bath, in the with colleagues, driven everybody crazy. But by this stage, you should actually. We talk about faking it till you make it, but hopefully by this stage you're beginning to actually enjoy it
and look forward to it rather than.
Well, I know a lot of people who said I can't do this, and I don't know why I'm here. Have actually turned round with great surprise and said, "Wow, I actually enjoyed that."
And I love the when you've performed and the feeling you get afterwards, which is a great feeling.
Well, it's marvellous, and you the whole purpose is when you talk to people, why are you doing this? And they say, I don't know. I just want to survive it and not look like a complete prat, or die.
Yes.
And in fact, every presentation that you undertake should be about influence. You're obtaining influence. And it's incredibly important. It's important to people's careers.
And I think if you still feel nervous when you're standing up on stage or delivering a pitch, we call it putting on your imaginary cloak of confidence.
Yes.
So if you imagine you're a really confident person, or you can picture somebody that you know is really confident, just imagine putting your cloak of confidence on, and that will,
Yes, and there's real confidence to be had from being able to do this. It really is a gift that will carry you through life. I think it should be mandatory that all children learn to do this at
and
school
as you
age.
know, we're talking about how we can make that happen as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Jane, for your words of wisdom and inspiration.
Pleasure.
So I'd like to leave you with a couple of thoughts. If you'd like further insights and information, please do download our white paper, 5 Steps to Inspire Confidence in Your High Potential Women, from our website. And if you have enjoyed listening to us today, feel free to book a no obligation call with me via our website, and I'd be delighted to talk you through some of the programs that we offer. And I'd also like to say good luck with your conversations, and I hope you have some very positive conversations with the women in your team. So the way we help organisations like yours, we offer tailored training and coaching, and we do this through in-house workshops, lunch and learn sessions, virtual group coaching and in-person coaching as well, on a variety of different topics: communication skills, public speaking, media training, as you can see, leadership development, presentation skills, and motivation and confidence, just to name a few. And all of these can be bespoke and tailored to your needs. And before you go, I have a 2-minute video for you to watch, which goes through our Speak Up programme, and you can hear from some of the people we have worked with and what they've thought of our programme. Does the thought of standing up and speaking in front of an audience fill you with dread? Do you feel sick at the idea of making a presentation? Do you want to progress up the career ladder, but feel that a lack of confidence is holding you back? Or maybe you manage a team of women that you think need a special boost of confidence to progress them to the next level of their career. You're certainly not alone. According to our research of over 300 businesswomen, 40% of them are nervous about speaking in public. Join 5 other senior businesswomen on our 8-week Speak Up programme for a virtual, intensive public speaking programme that will give you the confidence to make a bigger impact to stand up and speak in public. Bringing together experts, including an experienced vocal coach and an ex-BBC presenter, the course gives you the chance to practice, learn new tips and techniques, get feedback and encouragement from a group of like-minded women to make serious transformation in your attitude and ability to speak up in public.
The feedback I received was kind and fair and useful for my progress.
It was a safe, supportive atmosphere in which to practice our presentations. And although I never met the women in my group, I really felt like we had become a group of friends through our shared experience and through the really positive environment that My Confidence Matters had created.
Absolutely, the number one thing for me was meeting all of you incredible ladies. I think each and every one of us have such a different background. I think that's really contributed to the overall value of the programme for me.
So much confidence. I'm going to start my own business. So when I can't eat in a few weeks' time, I'm going to blame all of you.
It's a serious commitment. You know, when they sign up, that they need to commit to change and they need to be prepared to be pushed out of their comfort zone. It's been fabulous and I've loved it, and it's been very beneficial for me.